podcast. I am Rohadi, coming at you from Treaty 7 lands in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Yep, my new friend Robert Monson. He's going to be with us for 2 episodes. In this first episode, we're going to talk about his work in ministry, unpack some ideas surrounding anti-racism and spiritual practices and ethics. Then we'll dive into more of a conversation on politics and decolonizing the faith. Part 2 is a fantastic conversation where we just get the dialogue moving and talk about decolonizing and decolonizing the church. So stick around for both episodes. They're exceptional. Thank you, Robert, for joining us. And his book, well, we're going to talk about that in the first part as well. The audio is a little bit messed up for the first couple of minutes here, but then I sorted out. So stay tuned. Let's jump right in. Big pleasure to invite my new friend, Robert Monson. Welcome, friend, to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
You wear a ton of different hats. A man of many vocations. Can I say that?
Yeah.
A lot of artists are like that. Hey, would you consider yourself would you say that I'm an artist?
Yes, I would. Yeah. At this juncture in my life, I would.
So not always.
No, not even close.
So what has shifted for you to first tell us what all the artistic pieces are that make you whole?
Yeah. I am a writer. I'm a musician. I'm an advocate. And to me, that's artistry. So writing, music, advocacy, those are kind of the things that I dance with. I also, I also do a podcast, and there's an art form with podcasting. And so those are the kind of main things that would make up the artistic portion of me.
Today we're going to talk about your latest book. I want to get into that. We're going to chat a little bit about you, get an intro about you, and then we're going to see where this bus takes us. But we were chatting off air about our shared interests, which is kind of this emerging hope that a lot of artists and leaders have around decolonizing the Christian faith or decolonizing culture. So hopefully we get into that. But first off, take us back as far as you want to take us, but give us a little bit of an intro, because you're in Denver, Colorado right now, but you haven't been there since the beginning of time.
I'm not that old. I look young, though.
You look younger than me. Young and fresh.
Yeah. But I am originally from Chicago, and one of 7 children growing up there. And that was an interesting childhood, to say the least. And that would be a whole podcast to divulge things about my childhood. But being in Chicago shaped me, my way of thinking, my way of being, my way of understanding the world. And from there, I have lived in multiple places within America. And even most notably, I lived in Tokyo, Japan on numerous occasions, and teaching there. And so I have been all over, and my latest act has brought me here to Denver, Colorado. And so I've been here for almost 4 years, probably. So, yeah.
One of the questions that society, culturally, we always ask ourselves, but this isn't merely scratching the surface, is the question of what do you do? I know you have a hand leading a ministry right now, and so tell the listeners a little bit about the story of it's campus related, isn't it?
Yes. So I help lead. It's a nonprofit that has ministerial ties, but it's not in and of itself a ministry. But so the nonprofit is called Subculture Inc. I helped to start it with the CEO and founder, Tamise Spencer, and so I've known her for a number of years, and essentially from doing campus ministry for a number of years in a lot of different contexts, we saw that there were a huge gap in reaching minorities in general, but especially Black students. And so we found that the way that we minister to our white students and our Asian students, et cetera, had to be profoundly different than how we reached our Black students. The types of questions that our Black students would ask, mostly related to theodicy, and they had a lot of practical barriers in front of them that the rest of our students did not have. And so a $50 bill could take out a Black student from graduating, whereas we didn't find near that type of barrier for our white students, Asian students, whatever. So that was on the financial side. And then on the spiritual side, we found we weren't able to answer the questions, that the practical grounding theology questions that Black students have. We didn't have people to point them to theologically, because a lot of the people that shaped a lot of our material were white men. Not a lot. That was all that we were giving them. So anyway, so we dreamed. So Tamise had this in her heart, and then I helped to put some infrastructure to it. And this nonprofit was born as a way to remove barriers from Black college students. So we do give finances. We do help shape content. I am mostly in the content division and oversee people there. And so we do podcasts, articles, et cetera, that reimagines theology, but that is relevant to people in the margins. So a lot of our stuff centers Blackness, but we have a lot of listeners from all over that are not even college students that like our stuff. So that's been an interesting ride. A lot of people listen to us for the anti-racist component of our podcast and our articles. And they're not even in college. So so I help oversee some things within that nonprofit. And so we help resource campus ministries. We give them finances, we give them resources, we give them downloads, et cetera.
So when I hear this story and I completely understand it, you're filling a gap.
Yes.
The question, of course, where's the church in all this?
How much time do we have? No, how did they miss the mark? Okay, preface. I can be extremely iconoclastic, and there are not a lot of things that are sacred to me. Especially
that's good. It's not a sacred podcast, man.
Okay,
just
awesome.
Bring that,
because that's just me. Also, so even within the church, there are not a lot of things that are sacred to me. Mm-hmm. And it helps that I grew up as an atheist. So so I preface that to say why is there this gap? I think for the same reason that there was a gap with some of the widows that were being served in Acts. With the Hellenistic widows and others were. And so I think anytime there are people that have a place of privilege, there are blind spots where others are not getting served. And so what you saw there in Acts, I think maybe chapter 7, but don't quote me, there was this gap where a system had to be instituted to make sure that all the widows were getting served equally. Because clearly these other widows were being missed and they weren't being taken care of. Similarly, in our day, because so much work is built towards centering white people and whiteness, and a theology that is disembodied, that focuses on the spirit and not the flesh, then you have spiritual things that center white men, right? And so yeah, it's not surprising then to me that you could be on campus and invite people to a Bible study, but not realize, hey, these brothers got to eat. Like, and so I wish that we didn't have to exist, personally, because churches were doing work that was more holistic. And before you at me, I know there are awesome churches that are doing it. But let's be clear that if the overwhelming testimony was that churches were taking care of these Black students, we wouldn't need to be here.
I love your callback all the way to the start. Why? I mean, we've been having this problem since the beginning in this Acts church, and how the apostles responded to those widows, as you are sharing about the centering of the dominant voice, was who they put in charge of taking over the distribution of wealth and food.
Yes.
Were the Hellenistic Jews.
Yeah.
So they centered the minorities to do it for everyone, as a total subversive DNA piece of that early church.
Yes, precisely.
I was just going to say it was also indicative, as you were sharing, of how, and you don't necessarily process this, how campuses are, and the ministries that serve campuses are centered very much through a specific lens, a dominant, like who has created this content in the past and has served and led and so forth historically. I've never processed it through that lens, but of course, like, who's been the dominant voice creating those pieces, those ministries, the content, and
I love that. I think it's all throughout the Bible, right? You see where there isn't an approach to center others. You find there's a gap there. Like in Genesis 16, you see Hagar being overlooked, even though she was mistreated in a system that did not serve her. And her body was used, right? And so you fast forward to Genesis 21, she's still being overlooked to the point God has to show up to her twice and give her promises that resemble the promises that he gave to Abraham. But still to this day, Hagar's story is still not told. And so, which is interesting to me, and I have hypotheses about that. But she's a forgotten person, which is interesting to me because she's the first person to name God.
Profound encounter she has with God, like face to face, like.
Yeah. So I agree with you.
And we decenter her voice, her story, her name. We have a whole narrative of her people.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy. Yeah. We could go all the way down that road.
Yeah.
So this is not my context here, so I'll ask it for all the listeners asking it. I'll ask it for myself. Where's the Black church or ethnic churches in the mix of these types of ministries? There are certainly HBUs, Black universities, and is there not a connection point between church and some of their ethnic parishioners or congregations or students?
I love that you brought that up. I would say there have been, there is a connection there. I don't want to be overly idealistic about even the Black church, but I will say that for many students who go to predominantly white institutions or HBCUs, regardless, I see so many testimonies of people from their home church, grandmas and aunties in the faith, slipping them $20 every time they come back, or trying to take care of these like basic needs, right? And I see that, I've witnessed that. It's profoundly beautiful to me. That familial connection.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say that the context that birthed the Black church has, from its inception, made it have to fight wars on a lot of different sides. I'll say it that way. So, what produced the Black church, the endurance, the beauty, the worship styles, also necessitated that it would be involved in fighting for Black survival in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And out of Black churches, believers, civil rights movement was birthed, all different things, right? And so the very inception of Black faith necessitated that it fight for physical, actual survival, and being able to take care of one another, physically, practically, spiritually, emotionally. And time will tell if they've done all of those areas well. But I would say, with having to fight on every side, I think it's so hard then for them to have, like, they have a campus ministry division, as well. It's like, man, what do you want from me? Like, we're trying to like make sure Black people don't die in the streets. We're trying to feed the people. We're trying to combat white supremacy. Like, we're doing, if we could get a helping hand, we could, because they often get blasted for not being more involved in missionary work as well, abroad. And my pushback on that is, one, knowing the history of the missions movement and the racism and the missions movement helps you not get that critique. Two, when you're trying to fight for survival at home, getting on a plane and being in Hawaii, telling Hawaiians about Christ is like probably not highest on the list.
Yeah. We just don't really have that colonizer blood in our veins, but maybe that's that doesn't explain everything.
Truly.
It brings up the reality that many of these ministries, and you think of campus ministry, and you also think about international work.
Yes.
That's work of privilege.
Yes.
That's the work of, you got to have a level of privilege underneath you to afford you the time, the money, the training, the support to accomplish some of these things.
Yeah. It does. And we want to be able to have something that is in that gap, because you're right, it is a privilege. And it's a privilege for Black students to even go to college. I hate that it's still a privilege. I hate that. And so when these students hit campus, how much can their churches support them? There are some churches doing awesome work in this regard, but there's too many battles to wage. And so hopefully through our work, we can help like lighten the load some. But even ourselves, we don't have all the answers. We don't have unlimited resources. We would love to be able to give finances to every person that asks every time, but that is not a reality currently. So
we're going to put all of the info in the show notes. One of the pieces now, as we switch gears in terms of content, the content that you have produced here is your devotional. And I remember seeing it. Did it come out spring, summer this year?
It came out, kind of late fall. It came out. I've been working on it for a bit, but yeah.
When I saw this book, there are not a lot of books out there that are covering both anti-racism and also subversively, ironically, pun intended, or ironically. Pun intended, yes. It's not pun.
Yeah.
Help me with the words. Anyways, also a devotion that is actively but subversively decolonizing the faith as well. Subversive Stillness, an anti-racist devotional for the everyday believer. How long were you working on this? I know from one writer to another, it's like, well, when this first started 6 years ago.
I know, 15 years ago when I got the vision. No, I think it actually, in actuality, came together in a short amount of time, surprisingly. I first had the idea on a run in February, March.
Of this year.
Yes, of this year. And I think a lot when I run.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's like the start of the preview. If you had a little movie preview of this book, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it starts with like the setting sun,
Yeah.
and Robert's running.
Yes, and I was
And then,
running like a gazelle. No, I was not at all. And so
some light saxophone.
yeah, exactly.
I can picture this. I was
was
feeling it.
It was beautiful. Even so I had this thought around February, March, and kind of pushed it to the side, and really started on thinking through it towards the end of March and April, and just kind of jumped in, and that's kind of how I am. And
Yeah.
so really it came together. Actual sitting down came together within 2 months.
That's props, man, because writers, as writers know, but the production of written material can happen fast if you have a lot of the power as the author to produce and publish. But if you have it in someone else's hands, that is so hard to do, to turn around a project, and a project of this quality that fast.
Yeah.
So props, Rob. That's crazy, man.
Thanks. And then it helps that subculture had all of their resources within it to help that turnaround be that. So we have a graphic designer on staff. We have published print material before from within ourselves. So we've learned a lot, good and bad, from that process. So then it helped that we had a number of the resources with editing, with designing, and I didn't want to have to jump through hoops of somebody else's hoops to put my work out there. I just want whatever I want out there. So,
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. You started to put this together, and the idea came prior to May 2020.
yeah.
What was the catalyst? Because let's be frank, anti-racist stuff right now is hot.
Truly.
Like, it's hot. You know what I'm saying? But you were putting together like these ideas came obviously on the heels of, and you're an activist, and you're in this. This is your voice. This is your call, right?
Yeah.
But this was not a production. This is not like a John Hagee or a Rick Warren, just, or an NT Wright when the pandemic hit, and somehow they're pumping out books on pandemics months later.
You're like wow.
No. How did y'all do that? You write fast. You also have a team of writers behind you.
True. Yeah.
This is a product that came out just prior to that inbreaking.
Yeah. I would say for me, kind of the catalyst for me, I'm deeply contemplative. I'm deeply prayerful. And that kind of fuels a lot of my actions, activism, thoughts, what I say and what I don't say. And so for me, I had been noticing for a while, anti-racism had been really popular.
Yeah.
But I was finding elements missing, right? So there's these strands within anti-racist work, or even deconstruction work. I know that's a term that's out there. And I have lots of thoughts on both movements, both anti-racism and deconstruction. But what I would say as a flaw with both that I have found was there wasn't a lot of talk of how to ground things in spiritual ethics and practices.
Yeah.
So either we're busting everything up, which again, I'm iconoclastic, so I'm cool with the busting.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily giving a vision for rebuilding.
Yeah.
And I think that is vital in the work, both of deconstruction and anti-racist work.
Yes.
Or we're doing work that centers white people. And so we're talking about things through the lens of whiteness and white America, white thoughts, white conservative thoughts.
Yes.
And that isn't all, beloved. Like, that's not, to me, I think if we, so there's these books that are popular, even the anti-racist work, that don't necessarily have any spiritual dimension, but they are good. They're informative. But I found they were either informative in helping white people, or they were, actually, that's pretty much it. Actually, right now, or there were black people writing on it that weren't necessarily trying to inform white people. They're just like, "Hey, this sucks," and I'm also cool with that too.
It's incomplete.
Yeah.
I think you have a more holistic approach, and it's so funny that you point out those two pieces, because as I think about what are the most popular books right now, I'll use a Canadian context, but the most popular books in a Canadian context surrounding the theme of anti-racism, it would be Kendi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so there's your Black Voice. And then what's Robin DiAngelo's book? Whiteness something.
White Fragility.
White Fragility. Fragility. And that's the centering the white narrative example.
Yeah.
Right there. The two top examples.
Exactly
what you said.
And I feel like I wanted something that, I searched for it originally. Is there something that can ground this ethic into everyday life? Because I feel what is missing, and this is no knock to any of those authors, it's after we read White Fragility, how does that person incorporate that into a lifestyle, an ethic of anti-racism? When we read Kendi and he has astute observations, how does one make this a life ethic? Or what I typically see is people go from book to book to book, and they're well versed in all of the top anti-racist books. But then I look at their life, and
where's your embodied activity surrounding the things
you're still racist, bro. You still don't listen when black people talk. You still talk over black people. You still center whiteness. You still don't give money. So then. But great, but your library is lit.
Yeah. Oh, shucks. Oh, there's a lot of white folks there that. Right. There's no video. It's just like the hairs standing on the back of your neck.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this book here, because when I saw it come out, it was for those exact. That's the selling point right there, Robert. Man. The selling point, that not the whiteness part, man. No. Is that you're filling a gap here in terms of the embodied, the activity, the actions. What are you going to do in response to the things that you're learning? And for not all, but for many marginalized people, Christians of color. You have that vein of activity or action. You know what it means to fight for survival, for your voice. Those pieces are there, but to articulate it in such a way. Your devotional is a 30-day devotional, and I value your approach here. And as you're sharing your approach in writing, I could hear that contemplative spirit and approach, like your process. I could feel that through the words in these pages, and so for that, I'm thankful for you, bro, on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
These are every devotional and devotionals are hot too. It's like anti-racism and devotional, like double hotness. Every devotional I read, though, I'm like, that's too long. You can't do it in 30 days. Like, You can't. Now, that might have been the approach of the commitment to the spiritual exercise here, but there is so much, to use the term, meat to chew on here that you have to, and maybe I'm just slow, but you have to just sit with some of the truths and the calls to actions that you have, and dwell in the moment and the moments and the time to process this through your body. 30 days. I love how you laid this out in your themes. I'm just looking at the table of contents here. Each 4 weeks, 4 themes. Each day had a simple idea to pull out. Each day has an action item too, as well. This is damn near genius. Tell me about the layers and the elements that you've placed in each day here.
Yeah. So let me read this sentence and answer your question. So I wrote in the closing, I said, this project was crafted in a way that would integrate your spirit, soul, and body to create a life that incorporates anti-racism. And so for me, I hate devotionals, if I'm honest. I am not a fan. The 365 days, and to me, so typically in a devotional, sorry if everyone who loves devotionals, bless y'all.
I think everyone's looking for fresh devotionals, actually. I think that's what it is.
And like they're 365 days, and typically there's a scripture. You think upon it in your heart really quick. What does it mean to you? I'm going to tell you what it means to you. Now pray this prayer with me. And that's literally every devotional ever, right? And it just depends on how you approach that. So here's a scripture. I'm going to tell you what it means. Think in your heart. Now do, now pray this prayer so that truth can become evident. So for me, when I created this, there's a couple layers. For me, I centered the margins. So I wanted to quote people that you would not find in devotionals. So hence you have Tupac Shakur, who's in here. Malcolm X is in here. That's typically not a hero of the faith. In different ones, there are different indigenous authors that I was intentional about quoting, etc. I intentionally quoted a lot of women. And so from there, so instead of there being a psalm typically, right, that you think in your heart, I wanted to give thoughts and quotes from human beings or songs. And they might not necessarily be Christian songs, but the thought was, can you see the beauty of God in this offering that I'm giving to you on this day? And each week has a theme, but each day I give you something different. There may be a psalm in there, but there may be a psalm, and then there might be a quote from a movie. And can you see the nuggets within this movie? Can you see the beauty of God? Can you see what this reflects about the given theme related to anti-racism? So I tried to cake all of these things in there because I wanted the part of having an ethic of anti-racism is being able to interact with people in the margins in ways that you see the dignity and the beauty within. So from the quotes that I'm making you wrestle with, to the prompts that I'm making you do, to even some of them, I'm asking you to look up bloody history, which that doesn't happen in devotionals. It's like usually like I get my 5 minutes, Jesus loves me. No, okay, this week you're studying atrocities related to indigenous people. And I want you to sit with that. And I don't want you to run away. I don't want you to, you're going to sit with that, or you're going to do this about that. And I'm hoping that people will be able to do this throughout the year and have different focus points for themselves. That was the biggest reason why I layered things in this kind of almost like blanket in this web to force people into uncomfortability.
The target reader that you picture in your mind for this book, who is that?
It's interesting. Originally, I thought white people. As I wrote and as I constructed things, my vision expanded because I realized that I was not being anti-racist by having that as my target audience. Because I realized if I'm going to center whiteness, even if how I approach this,
yeah,
I'm literally doing the opposite of what I'm asking them. So I'm like, no. That's off the table. I have a multicolored lens when I'm creating this content.
Yeah.
And my hopes are that I wrote it in a way, hopefully, that whether you're different ethnic group, different age groups would be able to engage with this. That's my hope. Time will tell if that's the truth. But I didn't write it to line my own pockets because I did it through subculture, right? So I could have sold it to someone else, but I wanted a lot of different people to see this, interact with this, and the proceeds of this are benefiting the work that I do currently, right? So
you'll have to get a white woman on Twitter with a lot of followers to retweet this out to then bestseller.
Yeah, hallelujah.
But don't tell her that you didn't center the white voice in it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's gonna go for you, right?
Hallelujah.
Any day now. Any day. That's a real thing, though, right?
Truly.
There's a lot of white women on Twitter, Christian women, who have used their platforms to lift up writers of color.
Yes, and I see that. Beth Moore is an example that I've seen in present day, who really does a lot of work in lifting up people of color and their voices. So I see that often.
Who's the? I mean, there's a lot. Of course, there's a lot. Big voice. They had a TV show. Jen Hatmaker.
Yes.
Was big behind.
Yes.
Austin Brown.
Yeah. Yes. Which is amazing. Yeah.
Gonna end off right there with the first part of a 2-part series with Robert Monson. We're going to dive in and continue this conversation about decolonizing the church, and there's some really cool ideas and pictures of a hope to come when it comes to community and reimagining what community can look like in this age to come. So stick around.